This is Marriage on the Half Shell, Raw and Exposed. So, we did not post a Valentine's Day episode or anti-Valentine's Day episode, but we would like to refer you to the one we recorded last year. I don't think our opinions have changed on that.
No, it's all the same.
It's all the same.
So, February 14th, 2022,
Yes.
episode 18.
Yeah.
The anti-Valentine's Day episode.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Enough
So,
of that.
tonight, we actually thought we would talk about why we're doing this. We started this back in 2020 during the lockdown, of course, because we were at home. We started having at-home date nights. Mm-hmm. And I think because we were sitting at our own table and we'd cooked our own meal and, we had pretty much demanded that the kids leave us alone.
Right.
We started having some deeper, more intimate, interesting discussions about a lot of things.
Right. Exactly.
Things that we wouldn't, talk about sitting in a restaurant, say, or whatever. And that's how we decided to start recording our conversations. But the real reason we started doing it was I think it was because we were looking around and we were seeing marriages around us either struggling or falling apart. And I mean, it was a lot of marriages around us. And it really bothered both of us. Yeah. Like we just I couldn't wrap my head around why it was happening.
Yeah.
I think, a lot of people were upset and miserable in 2020.
Well, sure.
Understandably so. But
the problem was already there.
Yes.
And this also includes marriages we saw that may not have looked like they were struggling on the surface, but they were heading in the wrong direction. Or maybe a couple that's overwhelmed with kids and they aren't working on their marriage.
Right.
And, just various different reasons that a marriage might eventually end up struggling, or, as you said, is already struggling, or breaking up or whatever.
Right. So we came up with the name, Marriage on the Half Shell. Like, why would we call it that? Well, what's an oyster? It's this raw thing sitting in a shell, right? I mean, marriage on the when you get an oyster on the half shell, that's what it is. It's raw, right? And that's kind of where we formulated the name. I think it popped into my head, and we just kind of started calling it that, and never kind of looked back. So what we wanted was to talk about our marriage and be really open and honest about it.
Yes.
Like the good stuff, the bad, the joyful, the struggles, when we love each other, when we like each other, when we don't like each other, how we developed our friendship over the years, all of those things. I think that as Christians, a lot of people can have the impression that because we're Christians and we're married, that there's somehow some kind of perfection connected to that, or that it's going to be more perfect or easier.
Right.
It's going to be easier, right?
Yep.
But we're living, walking proof that that's just not the case.
True. I mean, we've had our struggles.
Right.
Definitely. And we've seen other couples where they were in the same church, which was, started out, at least it was a good church, and what they had was a surface thing, right? Yeah. And some of them probably hung in there,
right?
And some didn't. And this is in a church that had good teaching, no matter whatever happened with that
external stuff.
The external stuff related to the church itself and why, a bunch of stuff happened with it. the teaching itself was good. But it's almost like that wasn't enough.
Well, I think also there was an overall impression that once two Christians get married, it's just going to work.
Yeah,
And
because they're Christians.
Yeah,
It's just
because
gonna
they're
work.
Christians, it's just going to work. And, I've been doing tried to do a little bit of research on some of this stuff that we're going to discuss tonight. But, what we wanted was to be completely real about everything that's gone on in our relationship.
Yep.
And, also, we have discussed, we don't use names, obviously, but we've discussed other couples that have struggled with a lot of the same issues.
Yeah.
And they, as a Christian couple, you're still going to struggle with the same shit that every other couple struggles with.
All right.
Because you're a flawed human being, I'm a flawed human being, and being a Christian doesn't take that away.
That's true.
We still have the same problems and, a trauma and temptations and everything else that everybody else in the world has, right? Mm. And we've tried to be very open and honest about that. So, but Christian couples oftentimes can feel like they need to bury it. They can't talk about it.
Right, because they got to they have to look perfect.
Look a certain way, right?
They have to look a certain way, yeah.
But, every Christian couple is going to still struggle with trust, gossip, lust, contempt, porn. Porn is actually almost as common in a Christian marriage, struggling with it, as it is in just about any other marriage. And that could be, at this point, it could be availability of it. We carry little porn machines around in our pockets.
True.
It doesn't take but 2 seconds.
Yeah.
You know what I
but
mean?
At the same time, the temptation is there, but the desire to actually give into that temptation may be increased because of will be increased because of depending on how your marriage is going. And especially if you're burying problems or hiding them because you don't appear unchristian or something like that, then the problems are still there, and you're going to end up falling prey to the same temptations that everyone has.
That's actually kind of what happened with this is something we've discussed in previous episodes, but my own childhood trauma, I buried it for so many years. And it was there, it was just right there. And it wasn't even buried down deep. It was right there at the surface. But because of the church that we were going to and the people that we were friends with, I never felt like I could bring it to the surface and actually try to lay it all on the table and discuss it.
Yeah.
So I kept it under a very thin wrapper because it was still kind of obvious to my kids that there was something wrong, right?
Yes.
But because we're Christians, and I felt like I had to put out this certain impression of who I was or who we were as a family, I didn't talk about it.
Yep.
And, so
and just to say about that, I don't know if you plan to address that, but I'll just throw it in. As Christians, you don't have to do that.
No.
And you shouldn't do that.
No.
If you need help, then you get help.
Yeah.
Right? And if somebody... I think one of the issues we had with the church we were in way back, when our marriage was young, was they got to a point where their counsel turned out to be something along the lines of, well, it's kind of your fault. Where are you sinning? Stop doing that. And
don't blame your parents.
Don't blame, and yes, we're responsible for our own actions, but there was that whole thing about psychiatry at the time. I don't know if they're still doing it, but psychiatry at the time, who psychiatric counselors would generally find something that your parents did to you, you know, and it's like maybe, and maybe not, but that's all they would get to, and in a lot of cases, it's not the fact that your parents did bad things. It's just that how they raised you,
Yeah.
which was the culture or the teaching, or the Dr. Spock book, or I mean, there's a lot of self-proclaimed experts out there that probably ruined parenting for many a number of generations.
Right.
But in the end, as Christians and in the church, you should be able to go talk about your issues with someone who could counsel you, someone who's mature, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's pastor or whether it's just another couple in the church, or whatever, marriage group, or however it works in that particular church. You should be able to go and talk about it and be willing to make changes. Because, sometimes it's you.
Right.
Right. And oftentimes, well, I don't say this. Sometimes it's the baggage you brought.
Right.
Which was your case. And I brought my own too. And, but the combination of the baggage plus how you respond to it, that's the part that is you. And you are responsible.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, it's not 100% you're responsible, but it's not 100% you're not responsible. And anyway, I was just trying to get to, encourage people to, when you have issues, or if you don't know how to deal with something,
Right.
or whatever, find somebody and talk about it. And then, apply the sniff test to their advice, or basically just come back to our podcast and listen to it.
So what we wanted when we started this was, we stumbled across, there's a couple that I found on social media called, they're Trey and Leah Morgan, and I highly recommend their podcast too. It's shorter than ours. Theirs tends to be 15, 20-minute spots, but they also travel around the country and do marriage retreats, and they have three books now. So I stumbled across their stuff, and shortly after we started ours, and I was like, okay, you know what? This is kind of it's a movement, and I felt like we needed to be a part of it. And the movement was trying to save marriage.
Yeah.
Because statistically right now, young people are not getting married. And there are a multitude of reasons for that decision. It's a bad decision. This is not the direction we want our society to go if it's ever going to survive. We can't. Marriage is the basis of society.
Yeah.
A
civilized society, marriage and the family is the backbone of it. Right? It's not government. Some people want you to think it's government, but it's not government. It's families.
Yes.
Because you know how to live your own life.
Yeah.
And it's even more of a backbone than the church is, though the church
is based on families, though.
It's based on families coming together and so on, doing what churches do. But it's still based on family and marriage. And marriage means something.
Right.
But unfortunately, we've made it easy to get a divorce. We've made it easy to lose your stuff.
Right.
And people don't vet who they marry.
Yeah, that's true.
But anyway.
That's true. So, we have, approximately 60-ish listeners. So obviously our audience is not ginormous.
Not yet.
We would love to grow our audience and have more people. Mm-hmm. But despite the fact that we have a very small audience, we still feel like we need to speak up. Speak up in defense of marriage, in defense of the family, in defense of, building good relationships and being committed to marriage. Once you get married, you need to stay committed to it. That's the idea, right? We've had this discussion in the past couple of weeks, how you and I were part of the first kind of generation where divorce was not shameful anymore.
Yes.
Right? So no-fault divorce kind of became a thing while we were growing up, and an awful lot of the adults in my life when I was a kid took advantage of it. Most of my friends came from, well, quote unquote, broken homes. You know, they were living with a single mom, a single dad, or, you know, they were split between parents or whatever it was. And our parents' generation did not do that. If you got a divorce, it was a shameful thing, right?
Yeah.
But our generation was not like that. And I was actually talking to my oldest daughter about this last week or week before. And she said, oh, yeah, most of my friends have parents that are divorced. That's because it became more common as the generations went on. And now it's just widely accepted that if you get married, well, that's not really important. You can dump it if you want to.
Yeah.
Right? And obviously women have a huge advantage in that regard. That's not the way it should be, but that's the way it turns out. These days. So, you know, I guess I have some understanding as to why a young man might not want to, you know.
Well, for young people, and maybe I'm in a social media rabbit hole.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But from what I see for young people, college age, maybe a little older, maybe a little younger even,
yeah.
Men, the guys look out and see nothing but a bunch of high maintenance women, and women who are probably not going to commit, or be ready to jump ship after 5 years when they're not happy.
Right.
Rather than working on it to make both of you happy.
Right.
They're not happy, so they jump ship and then they take half your stuff that you've worked for, right?
Yeah.
So a young man's going, why do I want this?
Right.
Right. But young men, you should want it because it will make you better. You just need to find the right person and vet them carefully. Don't just look at a pretty face.
Right.
Right. There's nothing wrong with that at the start, but you have to find out who they are.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah. Like, you know, we all 5 of our kids are married now.
Yeah.
And we just went through 2 weddings in the last 2 years, right? Yeah. My daughter, they dated for 2 years.
The youngest daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. And then my son and my newest daughter-in-law, I think they dated for a year.
Yeah.
But that vetting process, it had, we liked her right away. You know, we could see that she was solid from a solid family and, you know, pointed in the right direction. But it was him that got seriously vetted.
He got vetted more.
Yes, he did. And which is fine. We were fine with that. We were talking to her dad and we were like, you know, whatever you want to, whatever questions, whatever time you need to spend, you know, whatever it is, we feel that he's mature enough to handle this, but you know, you need to be okay with it too. Yeah. And she was not going to marry him unless her dad was okay with it.
Right.
Right. So, and he put himself out there and made sure that her dad was okay with it.
Yeah, our son, he did a great job.
Yeah. They've been married 6-ish months now or something like that. When did they get
Sounds
married?
right.
Yeah, something like that.
Anyway.
Yeah.
More than that.
That's it. A little over 6 months. Anyway.
9 months. But anyway, yeah.
So a lot of people see marriage as like a temporary thing, or I can jump from one relationship to another, or
a social contract.
It is a social contract?
But that's not.
But that's not all it is.
So much more. But
yeah,
they just look at it as a temporary social contract that, you know, for women it's easy to get out of.
Yes. So, but, you know, I mean, what is marriage supposed to be? It's supposed to be a lifetime commitment. You say to this person, till death do us part.
Yeah.
That's part of, and people I think we did a podcast a long time ago about the vows. We went through all the vows,
Yes, we
where
did.
it came from, and all that kind of stuff. And those words mean things. Those
Right.
words that mean something.
you're
Till
making-
death to us, Bart. That
Sure.
that means something, right?
You're making you're making a promise, but it's called a covenant for a reason, at least in the church anyway these days. It's a covenant, which is even more than a promise. It's more than a contract. It's, you're committing yourself
Right.
to someone and to the exclusion of others,
Yeah.
all others. I mean, that's what it
Yeah.
says.
Yeah.
And it's not meant to be broken or distorted or negotiated or changed,
Right.
Except in extreme circumstances,
Yeah.
right? That extreme negative circumstances. But other than that, you both should be working on it diligently from the start all
Yeah.
the way through. And
Yeah.
kids shouldn't take you away from working on your marriage.
Right.
A job shouldn't take you away from working on your marriage.
Yeah. One of the guys I follow on social media, he posts a picture of him and his wife. They go on a weekly date, and he will say, "I love my kids so much that we leave them alone with a babysitter once a week."
Yeah.
And we go out and we have our time, our time to ourselves. And we've always done that too.
Right.
Right. So I think a lot of, especially young people right now, they think that happiness is supposed to be this constant thing in your life.
Right.
And if you're not happy, then there's something wrong. That's not the way life works. It's,
Definitely not.
you are definitely not always going to be happy in your marriage and happy with your spouse. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
You're living with another flawed human being.
Yeah.
So way too many Christian marriages struggle because they think it's okay to hide the hard stuff. And Christians shouldn't struggle with stuff like porn or adultery or, even being tempted to look or, abuse, right? Alcoholism, all these things that you don't associate with a Christian couple, right? But this is the way they hide it. They hide
because
this
they
stuff.
don't want to feel, they feel the shame
Yes,
more so than a lot of people.
probably.
And so they hide it rather than seeking help. And we've kind of covered that.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, we've got to admit, this is another, this is like why we're doing this. We're admitting our flaws. We've laid our marriage out in front of,
Whoever wants to
whoever is listening, we lay our marriage out in front of everyone and say, look, this is what we struggled with, right?
Yeah.
Even though we're Christians, we still struggle with all that stuff. And you shouldn't be shocked if you're married and, say guy goes to work and there's a pretty girl there and he's suddenly struggling with
Some
lust
temptation.
or the temptation to look or the temptation to flirt maybe.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be surprised by that because we're all human beings.
Sure.
We're all
have
going to
feelings.
struggle. Yeah.
So it could go either way, but also not only should neither one of you should be shocked, but you, the one who's on the receiving end of some, the attention or the temptation, you need to work on it. You need to deal with that,
Yeah.
right? So that you don't give in to the temptation
Right.
or put yourself in a compromised situation.
Right.
So it takes work. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is, but that's the way it is with everything,
Right.
right? You work carefully, you drive carefully, if you're smart, if you interact with people of the opposite sex, if you're smart, you're going to be very careful in any interaction,
Right.
right? To avoid, business deals, right? So putting relationships aside, a business deal, you be very careful about how you do it and how you work on it so that you don't have this appearance of a lack of integrity or something like that. So it's all the same. You do it everywhere else in your life, so definitely work on it. Work on doing that in your marriage. But you're going to face those temptations
Right.
in marriage, just like you would face temptation in in a job or business to cheat or steal or whatever.
Right. Right. I did try to look up some statistics. I did, that statistics about divorce that's been out there for years. I have no idea if that's actually true or not.
It's real difficult to get the right count.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we heard for years, the divorce rate is 50%. Well, you know who was saying that? Hollywood. You know where the divorce rate is 50%? In Hollywood.
It's probably higher in Hollywood.
It is higher in Hollywood.
But it's too high.
Yeah, it is too high.
Nationwide, one way or the other,
yes.
It is too high.
Yeah, that's because of no-fault divorce. That's what, it is.
Sure.
It is. Because marriages used to be a lot harder to get out of.
Yeah, and people had to work at them.
Yeah.
Right? You couldn't just throw it away, and now you can.
Yeah.
So
on a whim, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's what no fault means. And we're just trying to tell people, you don't have to throw your marriage away. It can be done.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And to be honest, it might feel like I'm getting out of this situation that I'm unhappy in or I don't like or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, it's not going to be better being divorced, because then you've upset, not only have you torn apart your family, but you've messed up all your relationships with your spouse's family, right? And all your friends and all of that stuff. It's just everybody's affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just you.
Yeah.
So
you know what? And if you were a crappy person when you told your spouse that you wanted a divorce, and you think that getting the divorce is going to somehow make you a better person, it's not.
Oh, no.
You're still going to be the same crappy person a year from then that you were when you asked for the divorce.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not going to improve your life.
Yeah.
In the slightest.
And again, other than extreme situations where, there's danger or whatever, that sort of thing.
Right.
Coming back and saying, we got married and we just weren't compatible and blah,
we're
blah,
tired
blah.
of each other. We don't love each other anymore.
We fell out of love. I mean, all those are just excuses.
Yeah.
Right? If your spouse is not being abusive, then you need to work on the marriage rather than just jumping ship and trying to start another one, because you're going to take the same habits to the next marriage.
You are going to drag your baggage around with you. Yeah.
And then
pretty much
it will decrease. I mean, second marriages have a greater probability of divorce than first marriages.
Yeah, they do.
And so on.
Yeah.
Right?
So here we are, married. It'll be 34 years this year.
34 years this year.
Right?
In June. Yep.
And most of it has been pretty great.
Yeah.
6 kids, homeschooled. We had some successes and some failures in there, and...
Right. Not with the kids, but with homeschooling.
I mean, some of the
kids are great.
Yeah.
We love them all.
Some of it has sucked.
Yep.
We both lost parents and friends, and, there's been some of that, and divorce has been considered, but by me at one point. There was a point in our marriage when I had just had enough, and that was kind of what triggered me dealing with my trauma.
Right.
Because that's where it was coming from. It wasn't.
That's where it was coming from. Right.
Yeah. We've had some bad fights. We've given each other the silent treatment.
Yep.
We've withheld sex.
Yeah.
That's probably more me than you. We've been through periods of time where we've kind of been indifferent to each other. It's probably more from exhaustion than...
Right.
I
would say that's where that comes from.
Dealing with trauma, like I said.
Yeah.
So, but when it came down to it, we understood that the commitment was the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't whether we felt love for each other. Because
Right.
what do you say as a parent? Yes, I love you, but I just don't like you right now. I mean,
Sometimes.
every parent feels that way and says it, right? And you know what? You're going to feel the same way about this person that you're living with.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's really I don't like what you're doing.
Yes.
Or we've got something we need to fix,
right?
so I don't like it.
Yeah,
And that's where you become a better person by going through the struggle of fixing it,
yeah,
right? Because if you avoid all struggle and all problem, then you're never going to grow. And we've
Yeah.
talked about that before.
yeah, yeah. So it's not getting your needs met, because honestly, that's not your spouse's primary job to meet your needs. You're supposed to be sensitive to what each other. You're supposed to be sensitive to each other. Like what I try to say, stay out of the office while you're working for the most part, right?
Sure.
Because I know if I interrupt you, it's going to be a problem,
Yeah.
right? Just things like that.
Well, let's put it like, you do meet each other's needs,
Yeah,
right? But those are certain needs, but a lot of times it's you meet your own needs, and your spouse is supporting you in that, right? Because a lot of times we can't change you. We can't change our spouses, for instance.
Yeah.
You have to do the work on yourself.
right.
And most needs come from having to work on ourselves,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Most.
yeah,
So you work together, and you have a partner in life as you go through struggles, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. And I think we've talked about this, where, when one partner is struggling with something, the other is there. But that doesn't mean they can snap their fingers and fix it.
right,
It means you got to struggle together,
right,
and you have support.
right.
And then the next time the other spouse has some issue, and then and you help each other,
Right.
and then through that, your needs are met. Isn't that crazy? It's like if you chase your needs, you will not get your needs met.
Yeah.
But if you chase each other, and betterment and commitment and so on, then through that your needs will get met.
Yeah.
Just like happiness,
That was going to be my next point.
You make the point.
Well, no, just that, a lot of couples, they get married because they're happy together, and then they anticipate that happiness is just always going to be there, and it's really not.
No, because
It's really not.
you get past the honeymoon phase, and that's a relationship thing.
Yeah.
It's also a chemical thing,
Yeah.
but it's not just chemicals. We are people, not machines. So you get used to each other, that sort of thing, and so you have to move into that phase of okay, it's going to be a little bit harder now, right? We're not just I was going to say googly eyes over each other, but I don't know.
Well, but I don't know. That comes in seasons too, because
Yeah.
I mean, now that we're basically empty nesters, we're back to we have googly eyes for each other.
Yeah. That's
things,
true.
Things are pretty
But you
mushy and romantic between us right now.
Sure. And that's great.
Yeah.
But I think it's because we kept working
Yeah.
during the years that we had kids.
Yeah. See that's and I think that's the other point, and we are going to wind up here in a minute. But that's the other point here that needs to be made, is that everything is a season, right?
Yeah.
When you get married, you go through the honeymoon phase. That's a season, and then you start having kids, and it's hard, and you don't sleep, and you're chasing them, and you're doing things for them, and you're running them all over the place, and your house is chaotic. Also a season.
A long season. But
It is. It's
but
a
it
long,
does end.
And if the more kids you have, the longer the season
Yeah.
is. We had it for 25 years.
At least.
And we've been married for 34 years. So that's the bulk of our marriage was
Yeah.
chasing children.
Yeah.
People would ask me, what do you do? I wipe butts and noses all day. That's all I do.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, that was a longer season. And now we're in kind of the empty nest. We're kind of at the other end. You know, we're in the empty nest season.
Well,
and we're chasing grandchildren.
Yeah, exactly. But
yeah.
we're developing relationships with our grandchildren,
yes.
but we're also continuing to develop relationships with our children.
Yes.
And support them.
And hopefully being an example.
Yes, and being an example. And we're watching them continue to grow as they have kids. And, you know.
It was really, just a little side note, my oldest daughter, they just had child number 3 18 months ago. She's 17 months old, whatever. And so they went on dates pretty much every week, you know, and then, but after they have a baby, it has to stop for a while.
Yeah.
You know. But she texted me on Monday or Sunday or something and said, okay, we really want to establish a date night every week. Which night works for you? Now, a little bit of that was like, oh, you're assuming we're always just going to do this, right? Yeah. But, you know, we did generally. No, we did commit to it. You know, we did commit to it.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you know, there's a part of me that's like, okay, we set the right example there.
Yeah.
Because they want that.
That's true.
They want to have that, and they still have to take the baby with them because she's a stinker and she won't stay with us. Right.
She just cries.
And yeah, she just cries the entire time. And Kate's like, okay, do I want to go out and have a nice date with my husband, even though this little stinker kid is with us? Or do I want to be sitting there fretting over the fact that I know she's at G-Mom's screaming her head off?
Yeah.
So right now they've chosen for the time being to take the stinker with them.
Yeah.
And but anyway, they
leave them. Or we go over there and we have fun with them.
Yeah, I mean we hang out with them and do fun stuff with them and but you know it's that we set that example
for our kids.
For our kids, you know, you need a regular date night. You know, I mean. Youngest daughter got married, gosh, it's been 1.5 years, I guess. And they don't really go out per se, you know, but I think they do set aside one evening a week where they're just like, this is our date night and we're going to have a nice dinner and we're going to watch a movie or whatever it is. So, you know, that made me feel pretty good, you know, that we had set that example and that they were going to follow it. So the last thing, you know, that I would say is your marriage is not always going to make you happy. And I think we've kind of covered that. But, you know, I have seen far too many marriages fall apart because I'm not happy anymore. And it's like, you understand that's temporary, right?
Yeah. I mean, happiness comes and goes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it goes for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. There was, you know, that period of time in there where I kept saying divorce. I wasn't happy. Right. I was not a happy person at all.
Yeah.
You know, I was struggling with drinking and I was taking anxiety meds. It was a mess is what it was. It was a mess.
And I didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And we couldn't talk to anybody.
We didn't have anybody to talk to. No.
Yeah.
Because we had left our previous church, and I don't think I would have gone to anybody in that church anyway.
Yeah, after our experience, we left that church.
Yeah, so we just...
and we hadn't found a strong new church.
No. So we struggled.
Yeah.
We just had to struggle through it, and it was difficult.
Yep.
It really was. But we did it. We came out the other end. Here we are.
Yeah. I think we're pretty happy.
I think it's happier than we've been through most of our marriage.
Okay.
I would say that.
Well, yeah, because the marriage is stronger.
Yeah.
We've grown a lot.
Yes.
Changed a lot.
Yeah.
Done new things that we hadn't done before.
Right. And we've also learned how to respond to each other.
Right. And that takes time because I think a lot of times I knew the answer.
Mm.
I knew here's how I respond to this situation.
Right.
But, we're people, we're human. And it's like, boom, the situation happens and you don't respond the right way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time. People, and we've talked about this before. People take a long time to change.
Yeah.
But they do change.
Right.
You can change, I should say. There's people out there who think nobody changes. It's like,
no, everybody changes. Everybody changes.
Well, it's partially true with habits, but they can be changed, and everybody can change. Everybody does change. But you can direct that.
Yeah.
And make sure it's changed for the good, and so on.
Right. Right. So, that's our why. This is why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Despite our smallish audience, we're just hoping to be more voices out there that are upholding marriage because it matters. And we would love to see the people around us, Christian or not.
Yeah.
We want to see everybody have successful marriages. Now, notice I did not say happy marriages, because what did I just say? It's not always going to be happy. Yeah. But successful, committed marriages, because if you're committed to that, then happiness will happen.
Yeah.
Happiness is going to happen, right? You're going to have happy times, you're going to have bad times. But it's the commitment that matters.
Right. And to say this, when you're in the bad time, whether it's short or long, if your focus is right, you're still going to have this underlying joy. I don't want to use the word happiness.
Right.
But it's an underlying joy that, you have hope, and that things will get better again.
Yeah.
Okay?
Everything's a season.
Everything's a season.
Yeah.
You know that, and that you just need to work on it and get advice as you need.
Yeah.
And then the happiness will come.
Right.
Anyway, or with the work.
So, all that said, this one did come out a little shorter than the rest of them.
That's all right.
Our contact information is out there for this podcast.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yes, we will put it in the show notes. You can email us. We're not marriage counselors per se. We have had some amount of training.
We have.
And obviously we've been married a long time. So, Christian or not, if your marriage is struggling and you want to make it work and you're committed to it and you need a little help or a little advice, contact us. We will do what we can.
Sure.
Or we will we will point you to someone
right
who can help you.
Yeah.
But for God's sake, don't just give up and walk away because you're not happy right now.
Right. Yeah. Or if you have questions.
Yes.
About whatever.
Yeah.
If you want to ask questions about our marriage.
We call it Marriage on the Half Shell for a reason.
Ask whatever you want. And we'll do our best to answer it.
Yeah.
Or if you have questions about marriage in general, or
right.
how to deal with marriage issues or child issues too.
Right. Yeah.
We haven't talked a lot about kids, but
I think we will this year. I think we'll get into
about
that a
how
little bit this year.
to raise kids within the family and all that, because that's part of your marriage too.
Yeah.
And like I said, we'll get to it. But if you have questions, ask us, and if we don't know the answer, then we'll tell you, and we'll point you to some people that we know.
Right.
And we're not affiliated with anyone.
Right.
We don't even make any money on this podcast.
No.
We don't do anything of that like that. But whenever we point you to someone, it's because we've seen them as a good resource or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, We will be posting another podcast probably within a month or so. We've got a couple more topics we want
to go once a month.
We'll try to go once a month or so. We do have some topics in mind, so we will talk soon.
All right.
Then Marriage on the Half Shell, Raw and Exposed.